Recording?
Yeah.
Okay, is it working? It's not even working. It's not even following me. Follow. Stupid. Can you see it up there? We're going to go with it. All right. So, here's what I want to do today. I want to speak at you today for, let's put a time up. Let's go, oh, come on. You can give me 6 today, don't you think? Yeah, okay. So, what we're going to do today is this. First of all, what I want to do is I want to make the distinction between 2 anatomical regions within the respiratory system. It's real easy to remember. You've got the upper respiratory system and the lower respiratory system. The big question is, where is that line that separates the upper from the lower respiratory system? Anybody have any ideas? Can anybody think of like where you would draw the line, where anatomists would say, everything above this is in the upper respiratory system, everything below this? What do you think, Brugers? Is the dividing line?
Like the top of the trachea.
Top of the trachea? All right. So essentially you're in the right ballpark. Here's what they say. They say that the larynx is your voice box, your vocal cords, that is the divider. Now, there's some discussion about whether the larynx is in the upper or the lower. And I just want you to know that is where the larynx is, that is the division. Whether you tell me that the larynx is in the upper or the lower, I'm not going to argue with you. Yes, you're both right. But anything below the larynx, like the trachea, that's in the lower respiratory system. Anything above the larynx, like the nasal cavity, the tongue, all of those things are in the upper respiratory system, although the tongue's not part of the respiratory system. It's part of the oral cavity. All right, so just know that the larynx is the dividing line. Now, what I want to talk about today, we've spent a lot of time talking about all the parts of the upper respiratory system. We mentioned the importance of the nasal cavity and the mucous membranes and the nostril hairs, all in helping you filter, warm, and moisten the air before it hits your lungs. All right, that's really the primary responsibility of the upper respiratory system. The lower respiratory system is important because that is where the gas exchange occurs. And I want to explain that to you as we move forward here. So basically, we're going to talk from here down. And we're going to be focusing in on that area right there. Now, what I have here in this picture is the branching of the airways as it goes through the trachea, as the air is coming down, as the air splits into the left and the right lungs. And what you need to be aware of is that this breathing passageway where this air goes, once it's in the lungs, I mean, you could think about it this way if you want to. Your lung, when you were looking at your cat lung, this is about what you saw. Okay? There's your lung. And I didn't even draw it properly because obviously what didn't I include in this picture? The what? All right, the different lobes. Speak loud so this microphone can hear you. That's part of what I'm testing, too, to see if I can pick up your voice. Say that one more time, Callie.
The different lobes.
All right, we'll see if that's loud enough. Okay. Now, within the lung tissue, you've got this branch network of air conducting pathways. And as they branch further away from the trachea, they get smaller and smaller, just like the branches of a tree. All right, so you've got the trachea, the primary bronchi, the left and the right. Once it splits again, the primary bronchus on each side turns into the secondary bronchus. Now, what's the difference between the primary and the secondary bronchus? Diameter and branching. That's about it. One tube, now it's down to tube. These 2 tubes, now they split into a couple different secondary bronchi. Once they split again and get smaller, the next level of branching, they describe it as tertiary. Tertiary means third branch. Now, the one thing I want to point out is this. Trachea, all the way through the primary, secondary, and tertiary bronchi, you have those cartilaginous rings around the tube, the airway, to help protect it from collapsing. There is an anatomical difference, though, when we get past the tertiary bronchus, and that is this. We start to lose those rings, but what we start to replace them with is a layer of smooth muscle that controls the diameter of those tubes. So we've got cartilage, 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 and then all of a sudden the cartilage disappears. And now at the bronchioles, which just means little bronchus, we've got smooth muscle wrapped around it to control the diameter. The bronchioles then lead to these things called the terminal bronchioles. And what does terminal mean? It means the end. All right? Just like the bus terminal is the end of the route. Okay? So this now becomes the end of the branching. At the very end of that branching, that's where you get what I described as that bunch of grapes, which are the alveoli. And those alveoli are the air sacs, and that's where gas is exchanged. So just imagine you taking a deep breath, and that air is split up into the right and left lungs, and that air is going off to these tubes, and it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And imagine, these are branching all the way through the lungs. There isn't just one little air sac down here. There's little air sacs all over the lung. It branches, and the branches branch, and the branches branch again. And there's more branching of the branches, if you can believe it. But eventually they end at this terminal bronchiole where these air sacs, these alveoli are. And those are the places where the gases are exchanged. Now I'm going to zoom. I know my time's up. I should have put 8 minutes. But Westfall made me fall under the pressure here. I'm going to show you what these air sacs or these alveoli look like. All right? Now, I'm going to help you with some terminology. Each individual bubble right there is a single alveoli. A bunch of them is known as an alveolar sac. It's a sac of alveoli. It might be hundreds of them. We love that word, don't we? Yeah. That usually gets a chuckle out of somebody. Now, ask you a question. What do you suppose, if this is where the gas is exchanged between the lungs and the blood, what's wrapped around each of these alveolar sacs? Anybody have an idea? What part of the circulatory system is responsible for gas exchange? It's a type of a blood vessel. They're really, really small. Yes, capillaries, and they branch like you wouldn't believe. So you have this network of capillaries that are covering each alveolar sac. And what happens is, as you take a deep breath, little bits of air goes into each of those alveoli, and the air that you breathe in hopefully has enough oxygen, and that oxygen is able to diffuse through the single cell layer of the alveoli and the single cell layer of the capillary. It basically has to go through 2 layers of cells. This is what it would look like. If I were to cut this open and zoom into this, you can see that inside of this air bubble is some oxygen gas. There's 1 layer of cells for each alveolus, and the capillaries that are on top of it, that's another single layer. So really the gas only has to go through 2 layers. And you can see the red and the blue there. This is deoxygenated blood. That's oxygenated blood. There's 2 layers right there. One of the alveolus, one of the capillary. It's very easy for the oxygen and the CO2 to diffuse through. All right? Now, here's my purpose for sharing this with you. Number one, I always feel that my stories can help because you actually hear something to interact with. You can ask questions if you have them. And it serves as an introductory piece to what you're going to get into. You're going to learn more of the nitty-gritty details down the road. All right? So, first question is, do any of you have any questions regarding the anatomy, the terminology? There's a lot of it. You're going to have to practice. Any question on the terminology? Any question on, are you guys all nervous because this is being recorded and you don't want to have your question recorded? Any question on the concept of this gas diffusion through these little tiny air sacs into the capillaries through how many layers of cells? 2. It's easy to get through. Imagine if I, put a piece of tissue paper or put one piece of paper covering the doorway. You could bust through that real easy. If I put 2 pieces of paper up, you could bust through that real easy. Now, if I put a phone book worth of paper covering the door, it'd be hard for you to get through. Same concept here. All right? All right. Well, it's time to work with this a little bit. What I understand, you're never going to get everything that you hear. Hopefully some of the details stick with you, and you'll be able to get this the more you interact with it. The first interaction that I want you to have with this material is on pages 16 and 17 in your blue packet. There's a couple of diagrams that I think will help you understand some of this detail. So that's essentially what we're going to be working on in class today, and if you can get that done today, that would be awesome. All right? Thanks.